chapter 8, 2 Kings chapter 8, and we'll begin there. It's a pretty lengthy chapter, so we're going to see if we can get through it. It says the king restores the Shunamites' land, okay? I know we started talking about in 6 where the Shunammite woman and her husband had started helping out Elisha as he started coming through their town there, and they made him a shelter so that and fed him so he might have a place to stay. And then Elisha had prayed for them, and they had a son, and the son wound up dying, right? And then Elisha brought him back to life. Well, God brought him back to life through Elisha, and so we see here that now they had the famine that was in the land, and Elisha is going to tell her that she should leave, right? So that's where we're going to start up right there on 2 Kings chapter 8. It says, Then Elisha spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise and go, and you and your household, and stay wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine, and furthermore, it will come upon the land for 7 years. So the woman arose and did according to the saying of the man of God, and she went with her household and dwelt in the land of the Philistines for 7 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 7 years that the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went to make an appeal to the king for her house and for her land. Then the king talked with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, Tell me, please, all the great things Elisha has done. Now it happened, as he was telling the king how he had restored the dead to life, that there was the woman whose son he had restored to life, appealing to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, My lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son whom Elisha restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed a certain officer for her, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the proceeds of the fields from the day that she left the land until now. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. So here we see that the king is going to restore the woman's land and all that, and even all that the proceeds that came from that land during those 7 years that she was gone living in the land of the Philistines back to her, right? So I see here one of the things that caught me, kind of brought me back, was where Gehazi, he had asked Gehazi to tell him all about Elisha's good deeds and the things that he had done, right? Why do you think the king was inquiring about that? Was it just
more about Elijah?
Yeah, he was just wanting to know a little bit more about the man that served God, or what? Yes? Curiosity, maybe? Yeah? I think it was probably out of curiosity about, here he was, and he was bringing people back to life, and he was a man of God, and he was just being inquisitive, right? He was wanting to know, It says, Elisha spoke to the woman, though, and whose son had been restored to life, and he said what? It says, this describes Elisha's previous dealings with the woman. She and her husband were godly, generous people who helped the prophet. Through Elisha's prayer, they were blessed with a son who was also brought back miraculously to life. He's told her and her household, right, to go and find somewhere else to live, right, because there was a famine coming. It says, on the advice of the prophet, the woman and her family left Israel because of the coming famine and in the land of the Philistines, where they were spared from the worst of the famine. And why do you think that the Philistines were spared and not the Israelites?
Because they had followed more closely the Word of God.
Yeah, maybe. But I think it was.
Israelites did not turn back to God.
That's right.
Bingo.
That's right. So the Israelites had not turned back to the Lord yet, and so the Lord was like, you know what? It's time to wake them up, And we see all through the Bible where the Israelites come to God, turn away from God, and then they come back to God, right? And so it's always after God has done something to wake them up. Absolutely. It says, upon leaving Israel and going to the land of the Philistines, the woman fortified her claim to her ancestral lands. She made this appeal so she would not actually be a loser for listening to God's prophet and for saving her family from the famine, right? So you think that she did it as a backup plan, right? Because, she was pretty smart, but we see here that the king talked to Gehazi and wanted to get some, he wanted to inquire about what was going on, right? He wanted to get all of the what do you call it?
Facts.
All the facts, absolutely, about the matter. It says the king talked to Gehazi. It says this is the same servant of Elisha who was cursed with leprosy in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 20 through 27. We see there it says in verse chapter 5, verse 20 through 27, it says, but Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, look, my master has spared Naaman this Syrian, while not receiving from his hands what he brought. But as the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. So Gehazi pursued Naaman. When Naaman saw him running after him, he got down from the chariot to meet him and said, is it all well? And he said, all is well. My master has sent me, saying, indeed, just now 2 men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the mountains of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments. So Naaman said, please take 2 talents. And he urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of garments, and handed them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them on ahead of him. And when he came to the citadel, he took them in their hand and stored them away in the house. Then he let the men go, and they departed. Now he went in and stood before his master. Elisha said to him, where did you go, Gehazi? And he said, your servant did not go anywhere. Then he said to him, did not my heart go with you when the man turned back from his chariot to meet you? Is it time to receive money and to receive clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male and female servants? In other words, Elisha knew, right, that Gehazi had done wrong. And Gehazi lied about it.
Leprosy, waters, no.
And so therefore we know that Naaman's leprosy was transferred to Gehazi.
Was water, okay.
Absolutely. So it says, it seems strange that a severely afflicted leper would be a counselor to a king. So it seems that either Gehazi was granted healing from his leprosy, or that this actually took place before the events of 2 Kings chapter 5, which is probably in my concordance, it says the best explanation is that the record is out of chronological sequence, but thematically tied to the subject of the famine. So I'm thinking that 9 times out of 10, this had happened after Naaman's leprosy was healed and transferred over to Gehazi. But he says, the king is inquiring of Gehazi, and he asks him what? He says, tell me all the great things that Elisha has done. My guide says perhaps his motive was nothing more than curiosity. yet it was still a significant testimony to the king of Israel. He knew that God was with the actions of Elijah, giving evidence that he was also with the word of Elisha. So, like I said, it may have been the king's curiosity about God. Never know. But it says, as he was telling the king about Elisha and all the great things that Elisha had done, we see that the Shunammite woman shows up, right, with her son. And he does what? He says, look, here they are. Here's the one that, the Shunammite lady and her son that was brought back miraculously from the dead. And the king did what after the king had heard from what the woman had happened to the woman and the son?
Restored all the land.
Restored, that's right. Restored it. It says the king understood that if God was obviously supportive of this woman, then it also made sense for him to be supportive of her and to answer her request. In the end, her obedience to God's word was not penalized. It says, so the king actually restored all that was hers and all that proceeds that her land had made during those 7 years that she had gone to live in the land of the Philistines. So we're going to continue on right there at verse 7. It says, Then Elisha went to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, was sick. And it was told him, saying, The man of God has come here. And the king said to Hazael, Take a present in your hand, and go meet the man of God, and inquire of the Lord by him, saying, Shall I recover from this disease? So Hazael went to meet him, and took a present with him of every good thing of Damascus, 40 camel loads, and he came and stood before him and said, Your son Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, has sent me to you, saying, Shall I recover from this disease? And Elisha said to him, Go, say to him, You shall certainly recover. However, the Lord has shown me that he will really die. Then he set his countenance in a stare until he was ashamed. And the man of God wept. And Hazael said, Why is my Lord weeping? He answered, Because I know the evil that you will do to the children of Israel. Their strongholds you will set on fire, and their young men you will kill with the sword, and you will dash their children and rip open their women with child. So Hazael said, But what is your servant, a dog, that he should do this gross thing? And Elisha answered, The Lord has shown me that you will become king over Syria. Then he departed from Elisha and came to his master, who said to him, What did Elisha say to you? And he answered, He told me you would surely recover. But it happened on the next day that he took a thick cloth and dipped it in water and spread it over his face so that he died, and Hazael reigned in his place. So now, in the 50th...
He committed murder.
Right, absolutely. Say it again. What did you say, Jackie?
I said, not only did he lie, he committed murder.
Yes. It says the man of God came. It says the leaders of Syria once tried to capture or kill Elisha. Since God miraculously delivered the prophet so many times, he was now respected and welcomed into the courts of the Syrian king. He was especially welcome on an account of the king's illness, because the king knew that if he asked Elisha will surely hear from God, and he would find out the true answer on whether or not he would die, or whether or not he would recover, or he would die from the illness. But he didn't say that he would not recover. He said he'd recover from the illness, but he didn't say that he wouldn't die from something else.
Yep.
Well, he didn't actually lie because it says that go tell him you will recover.
Yeah, and he did tell him he would
He did.
recover. He didn't say that the next day that he would commit murder like that. So, I know. That's, I can read what you're trying to say there too. It says, when he said, take a present in your hand, he says, wanting to know the outcome of his present illness, the king of Syria asked the prophet, and with the extravagant gift did whatever he could to prompt a favorable message. In other words, thought he could buy a true answer with giving him 42 camels of presents. That's a little overkill, wasn't it? So Elijah asked the Lord, and the Lord gave him an answer, right? He said, go, say to him, you shall certainly recover. However, the Lord has shown me that he will really die. So God gave Elisha insight into more than the health of the king of Syria. He also saw that the inevitable and ultimately God ordained politically that this would unfold, that his servant would end up killing him, right? So,
bitter and sweet.
yes.
Elijah said he's going to die, but he didn't say how he was going to die or when.
Right. Now, why do you think? So we see here that once he starts telling him that he was going to recover, he was telling Hazael all the things that he was going to do. He started crying first, right, because he knew all the wickedness, right? And you can tell from the things that Elisha said he would do that he was going to be a wicked king, right? It says God told Elisha more about the incoming situation than he wanted to know. He showed the prophet that the messenger of the king Hazael, after he took the throne from the present king of Syria, he would do evil into the children of Israel. Says Elisha's prophetic calling and gift was at times more of a burden than a blessing, and he could clearly see what would befall Israel through Hazael, but he was powerless to prevent it. Why? Because he knew that it was going to be handed down by God, right?
That's right.
Let's see, what was that? I done lost my place over here. So we are on 16. So it says, now in the 5th year of Jehoram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoshaphat, having been king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, began to reign as king of Judah. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done. For the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah, but for the sake of his servant David, he had, as he promised him, to give a lamp to him and his sons forever. In his days, Edom revolted against Judah's authority and made a king over themselves. So Joram went to Zair and all his chariots with him. Then he rose by night and attacked the Edomites who had surrounded him and the captains of the chariots. And the troops fled to their tents. Thus Edom has been in revolt against Judah's authority to this day. And Libnah revolted at that time. Now the rest of the acts of Joram and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? So Joram rested with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. Then Then Ahaziah, his son, reigned in his place. I tried to listen to a commentator yesterday who said it, and then I tried to say it like he said it, and it just didn't come out the same way. Okay, it says, Ahaziah reigns in Judah. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel. And he walked in the way of the house of Ahab, and did evil in the sight of the Lord, like the house of Ahab, for he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. So we know from past scriptures, reading in the previous chapters, that Ahab was a ruthless, bad king, right? And he was very evil, and so all the things that he did, and he passed that on down through his generations, right? So each of these kings that we know that came from Ahab were bad kings. It says, now he went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to war against Hazael, king of Syria, and at Ramoth Gilead, and the Syrians wounded Joram. Then King Joram went back to Jezreel to recover from the wounds with which the Syrians had afflicted on him at Ramah when he fought against Hazael, king of Syria. And Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel because he was sick. Okay. And we're back where we had left off. We know that Hazael had asked Elisha, what am I, a dog? Whenever Elisha had told Hazael what would transpire and the things he would do to the people of Israel, he kind of got offended, didn't he? He knew he was going to do it, but in his heart he probably knew he was going to do it, but he acted as if he was offended by it, But then we see that through this offense, either way, his offenses, they were inappropriate. It says he should have taken the warning as an opportunity to confront. Let's see, I lost my. He had taken this warning inappropriate to confront himself and to do what was right instead of turning an accusation back on Elijah. But we see that he didn't, and all the things that he did, he assassinated the king and then took over the kingship himself.
I was just going to what you said Wednesday night.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Exactly right.
Absolutely not. When we were over in Romans chapter 7. Absolutely. So we know that there was two new kings in Judah. We talked about, it says, now in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoshaphat, having been the king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, began to reign as king of Judah. And he was 32 years old. So you had a 32-year-old king, and then you had a what? A 22-year-old king, right? Yes, absolutely. We see that they both walked in the ways of Ahab, right? It says he walked in the way of the kings of Israel. So this was not a compliment. While the southern kingdom of Judah had a mixture of godly and wicked kings, the northern kingdom of Israel had nothing but evil, God-rejecting kings. So we noticed that the wickedness of Jehoram was not a surprise because it says, considering how much he allowed himself to be influenced by the house of Ahab, perhaps his marriage made sense politically or socially, but it was a spiritually calamitous for Judah. So that's the same way also with marriages today, right? When you have a Christian, a believer who marries a non-believer, right? Male or female, it's going to be calamity there, because one sees the godly way and the other one lives in the world.
One wants to be involved in the church, where the other one just wants to sit at home and
Stay,
play video games and just
Stay away
be
from
part of the world. Stay away from the church.
yeah. It says, yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for the sake of his servant David. Why wouldn't the Lord do that?
Because he told David that he would always have a son on the
That's right. He made a promise to David, didn't he?
Oh, he mentioned
And
Jesus
God does
Christ.
not lie.
Nope.
So
He
he
doesn't lie.
told David he would not destroy Judah, and he does not lie, and so he didn't.
That's right.
It said, the implication is that Jehoram's evil was great enough to justify such judgment, but God withheld it out of faithfulness to his ancestor David. So it says, in the days of Edom revolted against Judah's authority. This is evidence of the weakness of Jehoram. He thought that the marriage alliance with Ahab and the king of Israel would make Judah stronger, but the act of disobedience only made them weaker. And we all know that firsthand, right?
But there's some places nowadays that still they tell people that you two go get married, and they don't even know each other
Yeah.
because of the way they've always done it.
Right, yeah. And a lot of times there's turmoil within that marriage.
A whole lot of turmoil.
You know, so we know according to 2 Chronicles chapter 21 verse 12 through 15, it says Elijah, not Elisha, but Elijah, wrote Jehoram a letter condemning him for his sins and predicting that judgment would come upon him and disaster upon the nation. It says at the age of 40, Jehoram was struck with a fatal intestinal disease and he died in terrible pain, right? We remember that? 2 Chronicles chapter 21, verse 19, it said, then it happened in the course of time after the end of 2 years that his intestines came out because of his sickness. So he died in severe pain, and his people made no burning for him like the burning of his fathers. Knapp says, he is one of the most unlovely of all the kings of Judah, exalted by Jehovah. He was, for his wickedness, thrust down to a dishonored grave. And we know another person that his intestines fell out too, and who was that? He gained 30 pieces of silver. He was one of Jesus's
Judas
Iscariot, yeah. Running across the field or whatever, and then all of a sudden his intestines just fell out. That would not be a good way to die. Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, began to reign. It says the short life and the reign of Jehoram, he reigned only 8 years and died at age 40. Should have warned Ahaziah. The brief reign of 1 year shows he was even less blessed than his father Jehoram. Ahaziah succeeded his father Jehoram in the critical year 841 BC. He was not to survive the momentous waves of political events that were to, inundate the ancient Near East in that year. Indeed, in 1841 BC, it says Shalmaneser III of Assyria, who reigned in 859 through 824 BC, at last was able to break the coalition of the Western allies with whom he had previously fought a long series of battles. And those battles came in 1853, 1848, and 1845. 853, 848, and 845 BC. But we see that the one, Ahaziah, was 22 years old, right? It says this This is at odds with 2 Chronicles chapter 22 verse 2, which says that Ahaziah took the throne when he was 42 years old. It says, I am satisfied with reading in 2 Chronicles 22 verse 2. It says, is a mistake that we should read there as here 22 instead of 42 years. Is there a single ancient author of any kind, but particularly those who have written on the matters of history and chronological, whose works have been transmitted to us free of similar errors owing to the negligence of transcribers? This was said by Clark Lee. So what he's saying here is one saying that he was 42 and one saying that he was 22. My Bible says that he was 22. Yeah. It says, now he went with Jehoram the son of Ahab to war against Hazael the king of Israel. It says his close association with the wicked house of Ahab developed into a war alliance with Israel against Syria. His connections with his mother's family, she was a daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, and we know that by 2 Kings chapter 8 verse 18, was so strong and sympathetic that he paid a visit to the injured and sick king of Israel, Joram. 2 Kings chapter 8 verse 18 says, and he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Again, we see all that these descendants of Ahab did was walk in the way of the evil kings before them.
That's the original one.
But can you imagine being the king, being sick, and then asking your servant to go and find out from the holy man of God whether or not he was going to live or pass, and then coming back and saying that you're going to live, and then the next day he kills you, and then does all these wicked and bad things to your people? This would be, I mean, that sounds like something that would happen in one of these third world countries.
Yeah.
You know. Anybody got anything on this chapter that they want to bring forth? A lot of stuff going on in that chapter. We see that Elisha had brought forth a prediction from the Lord of events that would happen.
Where does it say he was 42?
I didn't click that of it. Let me go back into it right quick, Ralph. And I see.
Because this Bible says 22.
Yeah, that's what
So you're just saying,
Yeah,
two
that's
different books.
yeah, that's what I was saying. I said my guide had said that in some parts it was saying in 2 Chronicles, I think it was, that he was 42, but in my Bible it says he's 22. Yeah.
mine does too.
Yeah, so in 2 Chronicles, chapter 22, verse 2, it says, Ahaziah was 42 years old when he became king, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri.
Can you tell me again, 2 Chronicles what?
I want to say it's 2 Chronicles chapter 22, verse 2. Chronicles 22, let me go to it. I'll go to it with you and see what mine says here. It says Ahaziah was 42 years old when he became king, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, and the granddaughter of
Mine says in 2 Chronicles 22:2, Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king.
Yeah, and see, mine says 42.
Yeah, so.
Different books.
Yeah, that's why I was bringing up the translation.
It might have been a typo.
Yeah, that's why he was bringing up the translation difference there. A type, like it might have been an error. On here, mine says 42. It says, my concordance down here says, though, where it talks about 2 Chronicles 22:2, it says, this is a copyist error, easily made by due to the small stroke that differentiates two Hebrew letters. The reading from 2 Kings chapter 8, verse 26 of 22 should be followed. So the one that we're reading in 2 Kings chapter 8, verse 26 says that Ahaziah was 22 years old, and that's the one that should be followed. Because the translation, and because the translation, what they're saying is that whoever was translating it mistook a stroke, because the way the Hebrew language is written, they mistook a stroke for the number 4 for the number 2. So I think that's what the guideline I have here was trying to clear up. So, anybody else?
I would say the prophet was given that knowledge ahead of time, but at the same time, you can see where the prophet was sad because he knew how evil these kings were.
Absolutely.
God gave them that knowledge. Every one of these prophets that knowledge ahead of time, so they knew the history, they knew the past of what had already happened, but he gave them a futuristic say what happened. So it's knowledge that God has given these prophets to say, hey, this is what's going to happen, but at the same time, it is sad, but at the same time, these people just mess up.
Yeah. All right. Brother Ralph, will you close us in a word of prayer, sir?
Thank you, Father, for your word. Thank
Yes,
you for
Lord.
this time to study.
This one.
Now be with us as we go into the church service. You will be blessed and that we will praise you.
Yes.
Yeah,
We pray in Jesus' name.
Amen.